Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about changes with regards to the stewardship scheme with CRRU, give you some updates. So we'll go through this presentation, and if there's any questions, just pop them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them as promptly as possible. Okay, so we'll introduce why this is happening today, and then we'll talk about qualification requirements and the 5-year certification rule. That's new, and the CRRU-approved CPD scheme, which is also coming into enforcement as well, to enable us to buy rodenticides, and recent restrictions on SGARs use in open areas. We'll go through that again, and a bit of practical guidance as well. Okay, so welcome to this critical update session for pest control professionals and anybody who is involved in the use of rodenticides. As we approach 2026, significant regulatory changes are reshaping the way in which we can actually purchase and use professional rodenticides in the UK. So it's pretty important that we're up to speed with this, because come the end of the year, the changes that are coming into effect will potentially prevent you buying professional product if you don't have everything in place at this moment in time. So the government has implemented new stewardship requirements under CRRU, and it's driven by growing concerns about the environmental impact of SGARs, so second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, and these changes will, let's say, directly affect the purchase and use of professional rodenticides. And this has basically come about due to the amount of SGARs that are being traced in the environment. So currently, the monitoring program that they've got in place has detected that 80% of barn owls actually have anticoagulant residues within their system. So, the campaign for responsible rodenticide use have tried to put mitigating measures in place to protect our toolbox effectively. So I've got to give a nod to and mention CRRU, because most of this presentation has been taken from their materials that have been created for the industry. Why reinvent the wheel? And it's better getting it straight from the horse's mouth. So using their material is best. Then we can get a clear and concise message right across the board. So in terms of qualifications, CRRU recognise these qualifications here. So RSPH and BPCA Level 2 award in pest management 2010 onwards. RSPH and BPCA Level 2 certificate in pest management 2010 onwards as well. City and Guilds NPTC Level 2 award in the safe use of pesticides for vertebrate control for rats and mice 2013 onwards. Lantra Level 2 award in rodent management 2022 onwards. RSPH Level 2 award in the safe use of rodenticides 2015 onwards. Open award Level 2 award in the principles of rodent control 2023 onwards. BPCA rodenticides, using rodenticides safely, exam through Lantra 2023 onwards, and the open award Level 2 award in rodent control for gamekeeping and rural environments 2023 onwards. So you can see that this list is the ones that they have identified as being a prerequisite to being able to purchase any anticoagulants going forward. If they're older than that, then what you have to do is basically retake an exam. There's no sort of grandfather's exemption or anything like that. So these are the ones that are recognised by the industry now. And bioprofessional rodenticides said is changing with the new CRRU rules, requiring proof of competency. So this comes into effect from the 1st of January 2026, and users must show that those CRRU-approved certificates completed within the last 5 years. So if it's coming up to or has gone over that 5 years, what you've got to do in order to continue to use anticoagulants and purchase them is to join a CPD scheme. So that basically demonstrates that you're still competent to use anticoagulants. That's through continued personal development and continued training. So the changes aim to strengthen the rodenticide stewardship and are part of a broader initiative to improve responsibility responsible use by farmers, gamekeepers, and pest controllers right across the industry. So anybody that's using any sort of rodenticide for professional use, they have to be part of a scheme if their certificate is going to be running out. I actually think it's better to be part of a CPD scheme. It shows that you are, undertaking continued learning and keeping up to date with what's happening within the industry and any changes. It demonstrates that you're taking on board any additional training that's required to keep up to scratch. And these are the three CPD schemes that are available to us that have been approved by CRRU. So you've got BPCA registered, British Pest Register, and Basis Prompt. So if you're not part of one of these schemes and your certificate is going to run out, I would suggest that you become registered with them and try and accrue as many points as you can by the end of the year. Yeah, it's 20 points that you require for BPCA and Basis Prompt. I'm not sure how the British Pest Register works at the moment because it's relatively new. I want to understand a little bit more about it, so I'll be speaking to Sean about that and finding out what's involved with it. 3 points have to be accrued from CRRU actual material, so it has to be a CRRU approved training, so you'll get 3 points from that, and that allows you to continuously use anticoagulants. So in terms of recent changes with regards to use in open areas for SGARs, we should all be aware of this and should be adhering to it because it is legal. If you're using any anticoagulants in open areas and it's not stated on the label, then you are breaking the law. SGARs, none of them can be used in open areas. And we're very limited with regards to FGARs. We only really have vacuum and foam as a tool at the moment. So legal authorities removed all SGARs from the 4th of July 2024 for open areas. So that was taken off the label, and you're not allowed to apply them in waste dumps either. It's had an impact on products containing bromadiolone and difenicum. Previous to this coming into force, you could use them in open areas, but now with these restrictions put into place, it's been scrapped, so you're not allowed to place them in an open area at all. And this was a voluntary move, and it was instigated by CRRU. This was basically to safeguard our toolbox, because if we didn't come up with these mitigating measures to restrict the use of them, it could be that the HSC or the government would deem to be anticoagulants are not acceptable anymore, and they would have taken potentially anticoagulants completely away from us. So we acted as an industry to try and prevent that happening by putting these safeguards in place, by saying, do you know what, we'll take them away from open areas, and hopefully that will bring the residues that are in the environment down, that are being detected in barn owls. Consequently, they're now finding SGAR residues in fish livers as well. So they're monitoring that quite closely, and also in fox livers. So in Scotland, any foxes that are shot are being sent for analysis, and the results are quite staggering, really. They're finding that there's high concentrations of residues in fox livers as well, obviously because they'll be consuming rodents that have consumed anticoagulant, and you're getting that secondary poisoning or residues within the actual animal itself. So products produced before the 4th of July 2024 could be used right up until the 31st of December 24, and that was the cut-off point. After that, you weren't allowed to use them. So it's because using them in an open area or a waste dump is now illegal. So, that practice should be, you shouldn't be doing it at all. And trying to understand what defines an open area, because there's a bit of, confusion sometimes with what's considered to be open. Public parks and gardens, these are public gardens, they're considered to be an open area. Railway embankments and cuttings, canals, the banks of natural watercourses, rivers, burns and streams, reservoirs, paths, bridleways, cycle paths, allotments, airports, airfields, field margins, hedgerows, feed hoppers, anywhere where you've got sort of potato clamps or beets that are being stored or piled up in a field. Those are classed as open areas because really there is no associated buildings with those. And waste dumps. So waste dumps are now considered to be like a separate scenario. Only baits may be applied at waste dumps that are permitted such on the label. So this scenario covers the control of rats and disposal of rats in waste dumps and landfills where the exposure is assumed to be higher than is described in open area scenarios. So you've got a lot of scavenging birds there, foxes potentially, that will consume dead or dying rodents. For example, waste dumps do not include municipal waste management facilities or sites, because generally recycling centres, they have buildings associated with them, and they can be in close proximity to built up areas. Where I'm from, there's a recycling facility not that far away from me, and it's slap bang in the middle of a housing estate. So any rodents that are there will put pressure on the surrounding buildings and pose a direct threat to public health. So you can only really use cholecalciferol products that have been authorised for open areas and waste dumps. Cholecalciferol has a lower environmental impact in that it won't cause secondary poisoning. So in and around buildings is understood to include the entire building that is subject is the subject of the treatment, or those areas that are or may become infested. It also includes infested areas around the building that need to be treated to deal with the rodents that are potentially moving into the building and causing damage to the building property or present a risk to health to people or animals. So when we're thinking about like a domestic property, we're thinking about the back garden. If you've got burrows that are there and the rats are migrating from there and are accessing the house or causing damage to the house, then that can be treated. It was once thought by quite a number of technicians that in and around buildings meant it had to be like actually on the footprint of the building. No, it can be associated areas out with that, round about the footprint of the building. So the garden would be included in that. So it's important to understand these terms. The term outdoors around buildings is now the official, that's what's officially put on the labels now. And in regulatory documents as well. So that's in the CRRU codes of best practice. So that's what you'll see on the label there. It used to be in and around buildings or open areas, but now it's outdoors around buildings. So open areas, what is a building? So for the purpose of rodent management, a building is a type is typically considered to be a permanent fixed structure forming an enclosure and providing protection from the elements, so the wind, the rain. The building can be used to exclude certain non-target animals such as birds from taking bait placed inside. They're usually erected on foundations, largely enclosed and constructed from wood, brick, concrete or metal. Temporary structures or structures that can be easily moved would not be considered to be a building, such as, I don't know, a greenhouse in someone's back garden, one of these sort of poly type ones that you can buy from B&M or something like that. That's not classed as a building. It can be easily moved somewhere else. And for all intent and purposes, when you're doing any sort of rodent treatment and you're doing your environmental risk assessment, have a look to see whether or not it's possible for non-target species to access that area. So, for instance, this unfinished building that's at the top, me personally, I wouldn't class that as being deemed as safe to place rodenticides in here. You could potentially get kids wandering into a building site, or you could get birds entering through the windows or doors, non-target animals such as foxes entering these areas as well. So I wouldn't be placing anticoagulant in that area. I would class that as more open for risk assessment purposes. On the other hand, if it's fully constructed and no non-target species can gain access into the building, then yeah, that is a finished building. This I wouldn't consider to be safe either. You'll get birds flying in and out the windows, able to get access to bait. So yeah, do your risk assessments and document everything. So given the diverse use of areas for the products that we use, we understand that it may not directly address all scenarios raised by individuals, people out actually using product. So cases where temporary structures are erected or moved into open areas to justify continued baiting will not be considered acceptable. So for instance, if you had infestation in an area, you can't move a temporary structure there to call it a building so that you can start baiting round about it. So you've got to recognise that the products are used only by trained professionals and reasonable judgment will be necessary. So whenever you're doing any sort of treatment, document everything down, because if it's not written down, it never happened. Do your environmental risk assessments and make that judgment call first and foremost. Who can gain access to the site? Is there any non-target species present? Is there companion animals present? Is it going to be safe from the elements and the environment? Is it potentially going to be washed away? That includes when you're sewer baiting as well. Ensure that bait is secured and it's not going to be washed away and then enter a stream or a treatment process plant. So be careful what we're doing. Open area use, so what is a building? So the questions to ask yourself is typically considered to be a permanent fixed structure. Does it form an enclosure? So if it's got no roof on it and no doors or windows, it's not enclosed really. It's open to the environment. Does it provide protection from the elements? Can it be used to exclude certain non-target species, birds, from taking bait placed inside? And birds will sometimes enter bait stations as well. So you've got to be mindful of this when trying to devise a treatment plan. And it's usually erected on foundations. It's largely enclosed and it's constructed from wood, brick, concrete, or metal. So these are the things to think about. So with regards to going back to the training requirements, so take action this year if you plan to purchase and use professional rodenticides next year from 2026 onwards. So the important changes in proof of competency requirements. So for purchase and users from the 1st of January 2026. I can't make that clear enough. You don't want to get caught out come the 1st of January. You phone up to place an order and they ask for proof of competency and you can't demonstrate that. It means you basically won't be able to purchase any anticoagulants. So we said before, you've got that list of training certification that you can get. So you've got to have those certificates and they've got to be done within the last past 5 years. And you've got to, or if it's running out, you've got to be part of that CPD scheme and you've got to be able to prove that you're keeping up to date with your CPD points and joined as well. So this is a summary of the changes that have come into effect in 2024. If you go onto the CRRU website, it will show you all the minor changes that have occurred and all the major changes that have taken place with the revised CRRU best codes of practice. So it's worth familiarising yourself with those. So if you can get hold of a hard copy of them, it's worth keeping. If not, you can download the PDF and print it if you want to keep it with you, or just familiarise yourself with it. So in terms of anticoagulant use, SGARs, we only really have one in our arsenal. So that's first. The only one we've got is Kumatetrol contact foam. So that has a perceived lower environmental impact. The likelihood of secondary poisoning is far less. It's less persistent. So when we're doing our environmental risk assessment or we're choosing treatment options, this may be a better alternative than going straight to an SGAR. One thing I would do is check the resistance status within the area, and whenever you're using this product, you would still go back and recover any rodent carcasses for collection for disposal. It's particularly good where you've got issues with competing food sources, and it can be put directly into runs where they're moving around. It negates the need for them to actually feed. They'll pick it up on themselves when they're running through the environment and then groom it off their fur. And then we have a cholecalciferol update as well. So cholecalciferol baits may be used against Norway rats, black rats, and house mice as well. This includes resistant strains. So cholecalciferol is a better option than an SGAR in terms of its environmental impact because it's not as persistent. So it's you're less likely to cause any you're unlikely to cause any secondary poisoning using this product. However, it's not free from risks. If it gets dragged out or translocated by a rat out of a box and it's consumed directly by, let's say, a companion animal, it can pose a risk then. So it can have some acute toxicity to some species. So it's again making sure that baits are fixed in place. Some baits containing cholecalciferol are also permitted for use against wood mice or Apodemus sylvaticus. They're not authorized for use against yellow neck mouse, Apodemus flavicollis. So whenever you're doing a treatment using cholecalciferol for wood mice, just be careful and ensure that it is actually that's what's present. So it might be worthwhile putting down things like trail cameras or doing some trapping first to see what species are present. If they're indoors, they're going to present a health risk or a risk to the building. So get traps down, identify what species is actually present, and then you can then implement your treatment using cholecalciferol once you're assured that it's wood mice. Some products containing cholecalciferol are also authorized for use in open areas and waste dumps as well. So where we can't use second generation anticoagulants, I would be opting to use one of these products because we said before the likelihood of secondary poisoning is greatly reduced or negligible. So lower strength baits, some anticoagulant rodenticides have active substances are including, they have slightly different concentrations from others. So you've got ones that are 25 parts per million, ones that are 50 parts per million. The principle of the risk hierarchy when you look at CRRU indicates that the lower strength bait should be used first wherever possible. So have a look at the resistance action Rodenticide Resistance Action Committee website to have a look to see where you've got resistance there, and then choose what baits you would use thereafter, consulting that. So you can put your postcode into it and do a search and find out what tail samples have already been submitted and what resistant strains are present within that locality. And that there would basically force your decision about what you're going to be using. Well, glue boards, this is a sore subject. Yeah, glue boards are now only approved for use in certain areas, so critical infrastructure. Although the use of rodent glue boards is permitted in some parts of the UK, so the devolved nations, it's all different. So in Ireland, they haven't been banned. In Wales, they're completely banned. England, under a license. In Scotland, they still haven't come to a decision about it. And when you approach different people, they'll come up with different answers. In Scotland, I don't think they actually know what the law is up here. But you still are allowed to use them as long as you follow the codes of best practice. That's the information that I've been given at this moment in time. There's been no one that's come out and actually said outright that yes, they are banned. So yeah, depending on where you look for information will tell you different in terms of Scotland. So yeah. When using rodent glue boards, the frequency of inspection and dispatch of captured animals must be follow the relevant local country requirements. So in Ireland, it's same as previous, but before any changes came into effect. So you had to be checked every 12 hours, and the animal had to be dispatched with a sharp blow to the cranial concussion to the back of the head. Now in England, the frequency of inspection is far greater. You have to have sat a course to enable you to do it, and you have to apply for licenses to deploy them and use them, and you have to have shown that you've tried other methods of control before turning to this. Other things you'll see on labels at the moment is covered and protected bait points. So using existing materials, that is permissible, especially when you have neophobic individuals or rats. Using natural material may encourage far greater or quicker uptake of anticoagulant, which is a good thing, because then it means that when you're conducting a treatment, it's down for a shorter period of time. So the likelihood of it getting into the environment is greatly reduced. That's the same with burrow baiting as well. To overcome any neophobic response and to reduce the actual treatment time, getting the pesticide directly to the pest is far more beneficial, as long as you can retrieve all of the anticoagulant at the end of the treatment and make it safe. Now you've got to think about it being ejected from holes as well. So if you are burrow baiting, ensure that nothing's going to be ejected from that hole. So placing a slab over the top of the actual burrows that's been baited, using natural cover, things like corrugated tin sheet across the areas that you've baited will prevent it being ejected. That's providing it's in close proximity to in and around the building. You've still got to follow those rules when burrow baiting, unless you're using cholecalciferol. So generally the expectations are that, I said before, you'll get far greater uptake with this, and it'll be down for a shorter period of time. So I would be looking to use covered and protected bait points where possible. And again, do your environmental risk assessment to see whether or not that particular application method is safe to do so, and do your follow-ups to ensure that there's no change, nothing's been kicked out or dragged out. This the Rodenticide Resistance Action Committee. If you haven't been onto their website, I would suggest that you do it. There's a lot of useful information on that website, and it will help you with your treatments as well. What you don't want to be doing is turning up to a site, applying SGARs and having no real impact on the population that's there. So I said before, you can punch in your the postcode of the area that you're doing the treatment in, and it will bring up a list of resistant strains, providing that tail samples have been collected and sent in, and that will give you an indication of what anticoagulant will work best, or what form of treatment should be applied in that area. I remember once we were doing some training, and I'd asked someone to come up with an area where they'd had particular difficulties, and on the website you can actually go through the whole process of questions that you can type in, and it will tell you whether or not you're going through the right procedures in terms of treatment. So this one particular chap had been applying diphenochrome grain bait in an area where there was resistance, and it had been applied for probably 6 months to no real effect, and he never knew anything about this particular site. And it brings up heat maps like this. So if you were to type this address into the web search, it'll bring you to the website, and then you can start to play around with it, punch in postcodes, and it will give you heat maps like this, where it will tell you whether or not you've got resistance to certain anticoagulants, and what the best procedures are to try and overcome those resistant strains. Thank you very much. And if